Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Laura, and welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. Today, you'll be hearing from me about the path to calm in turbulent times. The world continues to be a challenging one. There's a lot going on right now all around us. There's been geopolitical unrest. There's been tragic wars going on, economic volatility and uncertainty, fear of layoffs, actual layoffs happening in droves, and it's feeling unstable. It's feeling unpredictable and unsettling, to say the least. And I can see a lot of heightened emotions around me in my clients, in my network, and of course on social media and in the media, causing a lot of anger, anxiety, frustration, fear. And when we get extreme polarization, it's really difficult to have a healthy discussion. It turns into a battleground, and we can't even discuss things in a calm manner. A respectful debate seems few and far between these days, especially when it comes to politics. On top of all of that, we have the rapid pace of AI and the need to keep up with technology. Workloads are already busy, and then you add on the technology demands, and then layoffs are leading to people having to do more work with fewer resources. So the workloads are heavy. They can be insurmountable, and there's high levels of stress. People have shorter fuses. That can all lead to burnout, a topic that I speak on a lot. And I'm concerned about all of this. So I wanted to share some information, thoughts from my experience and the field of psychology on the path to staying calm. How do you stay calm and not let yourself spiral during these difficult and uncertain times? If you're struggling with anxiety, with heightened levels of a low mood or a depression, or if you're just feeling burnt out, you're feeling cynical, not good enough at your work, like this will never get better, these are all signs that we need to get you to a calmer state. We need to help you to navigate this tricky place that we're in. And I like to use the word tricky rather than brutal, for example, because tricky is a more approachable word. Tricky means, in the Oxford Dictionary, that the situation requires care and skill because it's difficult. And that's exactly what navigating this life can be. It can be difficult and tricky. It can also be incredibly brutal for some of us, depending on where you are in the world and what you're dealing with. But one thing's for sure, life is full of curveballs. It has its difficult patches, and a lot of life is unpredictable. So given all of this, we need to learn how to focus on what we can control and focus on the present day that is in our grasp. And it's the only thing that's guaranteed is the day, not even the day. Life can change in a moment, but we have today to work with, and we need to understand what we can do to make the most of today, which will help us stay grounded and bring down our levels of anxiety and fear to a place of groundedness and calm and realizing that there is beauty in this day. I'm looking out my window now at the office, and I can see the river, and the river is flowing beautifully, and there's people riding their bikes here in Calgary. I think people have the stereotype that our winters are brutal and you can't get outside at all. I'd say our winters are tricky at times, but we get patches. We get patches of beautiful weather in the middle of the winter, and people are out and about today, and yeah, we can be outside a lot at certain points. So that was a little distraction, but what I wanted to tell you was there's always things around you in nature to be grateful for. Even if you live in a big metropolitan city, there's pieces of nature. There's the blooms in early spring. There's the blades of grass poking their way through that sidewalk crack. There's the little beauties in life that we can be grateful for. There's the sun rising. There's the full moon tonight. Beautiful, beautiful full moon. So what can you be grateful for today? What are 3 things that you appreciate about life? Now, gratitude gets us into the present day, which is why it's a wonderful way to stay grounded and to lift our spirits. And at first it might feel really awkward or contrived, but it really is powerful. I just have to say that. And a lot of people who are struggling with anxiety, it's because they are living in 2 areas. They're living in the past, regretting things, shoulda, coulda, wouldas, we call them, or they're living in the future and they're worried about the future. Worry is fear of something going wrong in the future, something going wrong in your life, in your relationships, with your body, with your health, with your job, whatever it is. So it's a fear that's future-based. That's what worry is. And then the past is about guilt and regrets, typically. I'm sure some of you have experienced your mind plays over and over something, and I wish I had done that differently. Why did I screw that up? And then we start to regret and be hard on ourselves. And that emotion comes into our present. It comes into our heart. It comes into our mind, our body, and we start to feel the stress as if we're reliving that incident or that relationship or that, mess up at work that we had. The only thing that's important about the past is to learn from it. What nuggets can I glean? What can I learn to do differently next time? Beyond that, you need to let it go. Let it go. Let it flow like that river I'm looking at, the Bow River outside my window there. Just let it flow. Think of those past incidents as you're throwing pieces of wood into the river and they're flowing and soon they'll be out of sight. And did you learn from them? Yeah, you learned from them because you held them in your hand. You looked at them. You examined them. You said, what could I have done differently? And what will I do differently next time this comes up in my life? How will I navigate tomorrow differently as a result of this learning? And then you got to let that piece of wood go and let it flow into that river. Bye-bye. See you later. Holding on to that wood just cracks your hand up. It just dries out your hand and will cause you slivers and pain. It's not meant to be in your hand. It's meant to be let go. So that's the past. So if you're living in the past, stop it. Let it go and think of the wood analogy in a river or whatever analogy you prefer. Next, a source of major anxiety in today's world, and I'd say the more prevalent one right now, is fears about the future. What is going to happen? What's going to happen with this government? What about the next government? What's going to happen to the economy? What about my bank account? What about my job? Will I have a job next month? And you can hear the anxiety mounting in my voice. What if? What if? And what happens is your mind and your heart start living in this fearful future and going to worst case scenario thinking. And suddenly you're plagued with anxiety, your heart rate quickens, your palms sweat, you're just feeling, terrible and tense. Our muscles are tensing up because the mind and the body are fundamentally connected. So there we go. We're living in the future and we are assuming the worst. However, we can't control the future. And if we could, well, you could make a lot of money. You could control exactly everything you wanted to happen and win the lottery and whatever else. If you had full control, imagine what you could do. But none of us have full control because we can't control political outcomes. We can't control natural disasters, accidents or emergencies. We can lessen the chances of accidents and emergencies, but we can never fully control what life has in store. Life and work curveballs, we can't control. Again, we can mitigate them. We can put the conditions in place to minimize them and their impact. However, we cannot stop curveballs. And if you figure out how to stop curveballs, let me know, because that would be a brilliant business. The past and the future cannot be controlled. And when we live, when we die, when we're born, whether we get hit with an illness, we can decrease the odds of certain illnesses, but we can never fully mitigate them. So what we need to understand is we cannot control a lot of these things. And just like the piece of wood that we threw into the river, we need to again, let go of these future fears that, they come down and they land on us, and we need to just release them back up. So let's use a balloon analogy. Let's put these future fears. Yeah, the government's going to cause me so much harm. It's going to cause harm to my family, and there's trade wars going on, or whatever else there is going on at that time. It's going to cause me pain, or, it's going to be a World War III scenario. Let's just put all those things into a beautiful red balloon. All of these things, think about filling the balloon with notes, and each note has one of these future fears. It's full of FFs. F that. Let's put all the FFs into the red balloon, tie it up, and release it to the universe. We cannot control where that balloon goes, where it ends up landing, how it survives. But what we can control is how we walk through today. The balloon is released. What are you going to do today to stay calm and to make the best of this day? Treat this day like it may be your last day. Practice gratitude. Smell the flowers. Look at nature. Connect with your loved ones, your friends, your community. Spend time reaching out to someone who needs you. Express your love. Take time enjoying your food. Enjoy hobbies that you love that you don't get to enough. Maybe it's playing music. You don't get to playing music. Sit down and play. Stand up and play. Take time to go for a walk. Take time to do your art that you've been putting off. Take time to write. Let the words flow. Take time to sit down with your journal and express your thoughts. Speaking of journal, I'd love to tell you a story, because this is a great way to think about the state of the world. So the state of the world, you might say, is difficult. It's turbulent, right? That word turbulent is a commonly used word these days. But I would argue that the world has always been turbulent. And where we are in the world and what we were born into dictates the degree of turbulence we might face. But turbulence is all relative, and it's all perception as well. So I would say life and the world has always been turbulent to various extents. And I think that the example of my grandfather, George Hambley, is a good one to talk about how he faced brutal conditions in World War I, yet he managed to get through the days with a calm mindset and a positive type of outlook. And that was no small feat. One of the stories that really, tugs at my heartstrings is when he was in the cavalry, so he had his horse Nix that he loved, and him and his comrades, I'm probably using the wrong terms, but they were liberating towns in France that were occupied by Germans at that time, and they were trying to liberate these towns with courage and with their bayonets and their horses, and unfortunately, the technology had improved, and they hadn't quite caught up with the arms that they needed. So their opponents, their enemies, had machine guns at that time, and machine guns were no match for bayonets on horses. So what happened was him and his troop were asked to charge on this hillside. It's this beautiful farmer's field now that I got to see 2 summers ago in France. Beautiful, just like you'd expect a farmer's field, but it had a slight incline, and they were asked to charge, and they did. They had to charge up this hill, and a lot of them got gunned down by machine guns, including his horse Nix. So Nix fell on top of him, and that's what saved my grandpa's life. It almost killed him as well, but he was able to get out from under Nix and then realized that, oh my gosh, I'm at risk. And somehow he was able to escape with his life due to that horse covering him during the worst of the firing. And then he noticed that his best friend, Marlowe, had been shot. His commander had been shot. A lot of them had been shot. There was a mass series of loss in that group, and he was one of the survivors. He went on to bury them in this quaint graveyard in a farmer's field in France that we got to see, and there was poppies growing around it. It was just so peaceful in there, but so sad because they were so young. And then he went on from there to spend months at Vimy Ridge. And Vimy Ridge was a really tough scenario, brutal conditions in trenches. And we had the British try to take the ridge and they lost so many lives. I mean, it's just astounding, tens of thousands. And then we had the Americans come in and try to help because it just was almost impossible at that time. And it was impossible for them to advance and continue advancing to take out the enemy on the other side, which had their trenches and their horrible living conditions. And again, a lot of really young men who were thrown into these horrible conditions. And my grandfather lived in those trenches for months, and there were rats he wrote about. There were fleas he wrote about. He wrote because he was one of the only ones that kept journals. So rather than using his rations on booze, which would have been tempting just to take the edge off the conditions, he used his rations to purchase journals. So he had his little leather-bound journals, and he would write. He would write, he would draw, he would express himself. And it was his way of staying grounded. And it was his way of coming into a calmer place and expressing himself. And those journals are really powerful, and you can see the power of staying in the present day, of hope, of humility, of making the best out of crap situations. They even played a game, almost like a betting game, like you would with horse races almost, but with fleas. The fleas were so big that you could actually play games with them on the cold, hard, muddy, dirty trenches on the floors. And he wrote about how they brought in Christmas dinner, and that was one of a special memory, making the most of this horrendous time. So I would argue that those were turbulent times, and he was able to get a handle on how to keep himself grounded, knowing that might be his last day. I mean, you could easily get killed any day in World War I, and it was actually amazing that he didn't. And if he did, I wouldn't be here speaking with you, but I just wanted to share that story to tell you that there's always hope. There's always ways to stay calm and grounded, no matter what conditions you are facing, physically, mentally, emotionally. There's always ways to stay grounded and see the hope and see the gratitude. See that river flowing. Throw that wood into the river. Get that red balloon full of what ifs and future fears and throw it up into the sky, because you've got this. You've got the ability to stay calm and grounded during these turbulent times and whatever life throws at you. Stay well. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate and review the episode and share with others who may benefit. Visit me on my website at drlaura.live and sign up for my monthly e-newsletter full of tips and resources. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would be delighted to speak with you on your speaking needs. Stay well.